Hey, this is Nicholas with some more adventures in locksmithing. I gotta say, I'm a little upset right now because I've been used. I had a person call me out. He seemed very sketchy already from the phone call, but I figured it was kind of a language barrier. He was kind of speaking in broken English, he was breaking up. His phone number was from another state, and he was just, I need you to go by and rekey this. It took 3 or 4 phone calls. Okay, I told him, hey, it's going to take me a half hour to get there. I called him, or he called me 3 times while I was en route, wanting to know if I was there yet. And I said, no, sir, I told you I would call you. It takes time to drive there. I got to go through 2 other towns to get there. So I'm on my way. I get there. I get up front. I call him. He doesn't answer. And the last time he told me that his uncle would be the one meeting me there. I'm kind of like, well, he'll be there at the house. I'm like, oh, okay. And do you have his number? And he's like, no, just go knock on the door. But when I got there, he says, but call me when you get there. So when I got there, I called him. He didn't answer. I knock on the door, and this gentleman comes to the door, and he's hanging up the phone. He says, I'm sorry, but you just got taken. And I go, what do you mean? And he says, well, that was a scammer. And as far as getting paid for your time, you're going to have to take that up with him. But he's been calling service people out left and right. He's trying to get me to sign something, and I'm not willing to sign it. And so he's harassing me. And he's using, service providers and having all these people get upset at me and having me deal with them as a way. And so what he had done is the moment I called him, he called the guy and said, here's another one, basically. So I call the guy back. Once again, he doesn't answer because I'm trying to, maybe I have had situations where you're dealing with, because this gentleman was older, where you deal with a family member who maybe has dementia, this, that, but he's telling me he's not his uncle. He's not of any relation at all. But, I've had ones where family members are trying to take control of somebody who's not in their full faculties, and they resist it. So you get there and you're going to grandma or grandpa's house or whatever, and you go there and you say, well, they said you needed to rekey the locks. No, get out, get this. No, you're not doing any work. Get out here. They're trying to steal from me. I had the locks changed to keep them out. And sometimes it's that they're trying to care for them. It's always a tricky thing trying to determine, because there are a lot of people who abuse their elders too. So that's always a tricky fine line. But in this situation, this guy is just completely scamming. So I left him a voicemail. Said, hey, this is what this gentleman's saying. I need to hear back from you, or I'm calling the sheriff. Don't hear back. Don't hear back. I thought, you know what? I'm calling the sheriff. I made a report. Now, what does that do? Really, for me, nothing. In fact, the sheriff said, well, here's the number you want if you want to go through and try to file a claim in small claims court against it. I'm like, no, that's not worth my time. However, I want reports made. One, it helps this guy out. Because if anything happens, if any other service provider takes something against this guy and he tries to say this, when it comes to this harassment, there is now a documented record of it. That's important. The other thing is, I know the officers follow up. They're going to call that number. They're going to talk with that guy. They're going to spook him. Maybe he'll stop doing this. Because at the end of the day, I don't like being used, and I like there being a consequence. Sure enough, moments after I talk to the sheriff, I get a phone call from him. And he's asking, did you go there? What day? And I said, this is what I was told. He's like, what about this? And I said this, and he's like, and then he hung up. Well, he wouldn't call back, and so I sent him another text and said, just to let you know, I did notify the sheriff of this, and I will be blocking your number and letting the other locksmiths in the area know not to do any work for you. If you feel that this is unfair in any way or have any other details you'd like to add, you can message me. But nothing, dead silence. So, at the very least, this guy's not really going to suffer any consequences for this, but there's a record. If he continues to persist, if he has something, because harassment is a crime, but you have to kind of, small little petty thing, they're not going to do anything. But if it adds up, and now that there's a record of it, well, that's, as a locksmith, specifically, I make it a point to always, anytime anything is suspicious or doesn't seem right on a job, report it. Because my license is on the line. If somebody asks me to get in to a house and then they say something or do something that sounds fishy, I report it. Especially if they won't answer the question, said, like, it's not worth it. I'm supposed to be helping in the security business, so I always make sure that if anything seems fishy or not right, I call and report stuff. So that's just part of my job, and it's keeping the community safe. Sometimes it's not just about who's paying me a check, but making sure that they're legitimate people. Get a lot of stuff like that when it's spousal disputes, people wanting to get in. They have all the paperwork that shows they live there, but they're specifically this time, that time, and you get halfway there, and then they cancel the job and say, hey, it's going to have to be later, and they're constantly doing that while they're trying to get there when the other spouse isn't there, or they know they're tied up or something with work or something. See, stuff like that, you get a bad feeling, and you just know, no, something about this isn't right. I'm going to check in. And sure enough, the sheriff's department will clear as bell tell you, oh no, we've had so many calls out to that address. That is something you don't want to get in the middle of. And they can't tell me, oh, you can or you can't, because that's for the courts to decide. But they'll tell me, oh no. That address, that's a powder keg you don't want to get in. So, but it's just another day in a locksmith. But frustrating to just get used in that way. I just feel so bad for this guy. Anyways, hope everybody's having a much better day, especially better than that, gentlemen, and I'll catch you in the next episode.